Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Day of Impact 2.0 or 2021 as we have it today with Thrive Women in Travel. We are so excited to have you here. And for our first inaugural session, we will be talking to amazing executives in the travel industry and the hospitality industry. And we will be touching on a lot of good content over the next 3 days. As you guys know, if this is your first time here, you are welcome to join us in different ways. We'll have some information at the end. And also, for those of you who are returning, welcome back. Today, we want to welcome you with a message from Sylvia Camarota, who is our chair and founder, and a bunch of our Thrive Hive women who recorded a very special message for you. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Camarota, Senior Director with Expedia Group, and also a chair and founder of Women in Travel Thrive. Welcome to our second day of Impact. Thrive is a movement. It's an all-inclusive community for all of us that are passionate about travel and its force for good. I leave you with thought of my gratitude for the many volunteers, the Thrive Hive that made this week and all the resources available possible for you. I know you will enjoy these events, and you will in turn pay it forward with passion. Play to your strengths and always keep growing them.
When looking at a new opportunity, don't be scared by what you don't know. Be excited for what you're about to learn.
My advice is simple. I learned it from my mom as a very young girl. Ask for what you want. My mom told me, if you don't ask for what you want, you're not going to get it because people can't read your mind. So good luck and go out and ask for what you want.
Remember that pressure makes diamonds. Keep pushing forward.
And my advice to you is to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Network with people across different parts of the travel industry to get a fresh perspective on the same idea.
Hey, fellow Thrivers. My word of advice is to be curious and stay curious.
Spend 10% of your time networking. It's so critical to make connections. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
One day you'll wake up and realize there's no more time left to do the things that you want to do. Do them now.
My advice, stay curious, embrace the change, and never be afraid to ask for help.
Don't wait until you feel 100% ready to apply for that next job. Most men won't.
Say yes to the things that scare you the most.
So my advice is to nurture your network. Stay in touch with your industry colleagues. Find out how you can help them. You'll be surprised how this can also open doors and opportunities for you.
True worth is a measure in comparison to others. Identify your priorities and make them your driving force.
My advice, persistence.
This is for my ladies like soldiers be stand up. Remember when Tupac told us keep our head up. When the times get rough, you head up. Treat your life like a stage, you got here to tear it up. Pass the mic, let's go.
What a wonderful way to start this morning with all these fantastic women providing such pointed advice. And in that same vein, today's panel is going to be a fantastic one. We have 4 incredible women that will be joining us today to talk about some of the challenges that we have seen on our industry and throughout, quite honestly, throughout the entire economy for women over the last year and in general, just because of the way that things have been historically. So today, I have 3 panelists, and we will at the end be talking and airing an interview that I had earlier this week with Lenny Kane-Hannon. So I want to welcome to the stage Carolyn Jordan, formerly with Hilton, and I'll let her come in and introduce herself. Carolyn?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Carolyn Jordan, and I am currently in transition, but I have a sales and revenue management background and done a lot of facilitation and training and development with people. So I'm happy to be here today and excited to share some experiences.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Carolyn. It's wonderful to have you. Then we have Heather Jacobs, who is with Delaware North. Heather.
Thanks, everyone, and great to be here. Also very excited. Heather Jacobs, I'm currently the Chief Human Resources Officer with a company called Delaware North, which is a private hospitality company based in Buffalo, New York. And we service a whole bunch of different things. It's a huge company that nobody's ever heard of. We do sports concessions, hospitality, gaming, airport concessions. We have businesses in the UK as well as in Australia. Truly just an exciting time. I just joined the company in January of this year, and we're in this amazing growth stage of rebuilding the organization after obviously having been heavily impacted from last year. So look forward to discussing some learnings with you all and my own personal journey. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. And last but not least, certainly, Natalie Castillo, who is with CBRE Hotels in Miami. Natalie, welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about me and what I do in commercial real estate. I am a first vice president with CBRE Hotels based in Miami. I live in South Florida. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I have also 2 restaurants. I'm a commercial real estate entrepreneur. And my main goal right now, what I'm focusing on heavily is helping women advance in hospitality development and ownership of hotels throughout the country, because I think that's our next step as women.
Yeah, indeed. So I will stop sharing our presentation so that we can go into full screen for the camera for the panel. And I want to start the conversation by thanking you all for making the time. We know how busy our lives are. And as Natalie said, we're all kind of wearing 30 different hats at this point, right? We're moms, we're consultants, we are chefs, we are professionals, and some of us, do a little more on the side. So always good to have such an amazing support in this area. So today's tone for the panel is the human pyramid, and thank you, by the way, to the Castell Project, who brought you guys to us and said, you guys have to talk to these fantastic women. They have gone through the ringer and they know what it is to make it at the end. So today we want to kind of harness a little bit on that experience that you guys have had, and expand, if you would, on that conversation to benefit our audience. By the way, our audience is welcome to join us through the chat. There's a ton of questions that can be posted there. We have a couple of people kind of sorting through those. And so if we have time, we'll be able to address some of those questions towards the end. So that being said, I want to start with a general question and asking you guys, what has been the most challenging thing that you saw over the last year? COVID potentially being, the catalyst for that. But what has been the challenge in surviving a year that was so generally difficult, not just for one person, but for an industry as a whole? And Natalie, I'll start with you.
So I would say, just seeing people laid off, colleagues, friends, I can totally, relate. I went through, the last crisis, the GFC, back in 2008. And I think that gave me a better frame of mind for, what was happening, even though it was, completely different circumstances, but obviously the hospitality in particular was really affected. And I know a lot of people lost, sort of hope in the hospitality industry for a while there. It kind of seemed like people were just thinking, I need to get out of hospitality and do something else. But, I saw how strongly hospitality came back, in 2010, 2011, 2012, it just really geared up stronger than ever. And so, I would say just sort of living through that and seeing how much better we came out, and we kind of saw all these industries rise up from that, the Airbnbs and all of this other, segment of hospitality. I think that just creates opportunity for people to come in with fresh ideas. And I think that it's bringing us more into technology and hospitality. And so I just feel like it's going to create a lot of new entrepreneurs and new segments of hospitality. And that's really a huge opportunity for everybody to think outside the box and think, how can we evolve the whole industry?
Yeah. Carolyn, I'll go next with you on the same question.
Sure. So my biggest learning is that you need a side hustle. I've always worked for one company and been very loyal and faithful and put in many, many hours to make things work. And when the pandemic hit, I was beside myself trying to figure out what to do. So I've spent the past year working with the founder of the Castell Project, Peggy Berg, working on another nonprofit called Fortuna's Table that's going to help women in hotel ownership. So did that as a side thing to keep me entertained for there, and then also started some consulting. But I was like, wow, like moving forward, you have to make sure that you're ready for yourself to protect your personal finances and well-being.
Right. That there's always a plan B, right?
Yes.
Heather, and you have a different position. You actually are in human resources, and I'm sure you saw these whole thing from a completely different light. So I do want to know what your kind of personal challenge was, but then I want to segue into your function in a company and kind of how that affected also your perception.
Sure. So when you think about the last year, I was definitely impacted on both sides. So my position was impacted and having to make decisions about impacts to the organization. So it was absolutely a difficult year. And I think to your question, I think having had to make those hard decisions, nobody ever wants to have to go through that again. And that at the fast pace at which it happened made it incredibly difficult. A lot of times, that there's a side of the business or different things that are happening, but this was everything all at once. And that was hard. I think to Caroline's point, though, knowing that when you go through those things, and hopefully a lot of the participants on this phone call, understanding who you are and that self-awareness piece and taking some time out for yourself is actually a pretty good outcome too. And so I think there's an important piece and some life lessons as we think about the business standing back up again that we're seeing. So there are a couple of learning nuggets in there, and I'm happy to dive in, Claudia, from there. But certainly a tough year in terms of the type of decisions that have to get made. And I know that can linger and leave a lot of questions for people when that happens, for sure.
Yeah, so that's a really good segue. One of the conversations we were having about COVID and the impact on women's career, right, in general, and just in any career really, but is when you get laid off, when you have to go through the furlough, when you are kind of on that side of items, right, and you have to deal with that decision. One of the things that I know we talked about is there is right now no kind of system, no feedback loop, if you would, where you get laid off and you have someone to ask the questions that kind of start popping in your head, right? Why me? Sure. Why not the person next to me? Sure. If there was 30 of us in the team and 7 were remaining, what did they do that I didn't do? What do I need to make sure that I don't go through this again? And as Laura, as Carolyn said, there are so many times that you put your life in entire kind of, eggs, to say in a way, in one basket. What does that mean, right? You get furloughed, and now what? Who do I ask the question? And so that was one of the things that I know I struggle with through the pandemic. Not just me personally. Thankfully, we remain employed. But I work with a lot of women that had that question and didn't have anyone back to go and ask and say, hey, what happened? Yeah. So one of the things that I think we want to do through travel, through Thrive Women in Travel, is to have that support system, is to have that network of women who you can maybe not find the answers, but at least air your concerns or air your questions and eventually be able to gather some intelligence back. So Karen, I kind of want to hone in on that with you, because obviously you went through that process. So how did you get out of it? Like, what was your immediate kind of saying, okay, now I'm furloughed or I'm out of the job. Where do I go from here? How did you activate that network that we all talk about so much? But at the moment, it's such a panicky moment, right?
Yes, it was definitely. So I did a 90-day furlough before being terminated. And that was like my home project checklist, because I was like, I've got 3 months to get this all done, and the only thing open is Home Depot and Lowe's, so that's where it went. So worked aggressively with that. Then when I got the announcement, I was just in shock. And I have 2 children that had just finished up college, one master's, one grad, and one a bachelor. So I thought, wow, like never again will I get this opportunity. Neither one's married, no boyfriend, so they were forced to stay home with me. So we spent some family time for about a month or so. And then after that, I was really had to focus on me and where do I want to go and what do I want to do next. And yeah, so as you go through it, like how do you react to it? And I thought, gosh, I don't want this ever to happen to me again. So I've been working on upskilling and things that I can do to make myself what I would believe a more valuable team player, to keep my name on the A list if God forbid this ever happens again in our country.
Yeah, that has been, I think, a little bit of the prevalent answer I get from women that I have been speaking to. One of them is polish your skills. If you have some time, get something going, do something new, learn a new skill, polish the ones that you already have. And I know, Natalie, you spoke a lot about having your hand on many things. So how do you manage that balance of, again, wearing 3 different hats, being a mom, having all these things going on at the same time, and still kind of have to figure out a way to make business? How do you make your day 30-hour long? Because how else would you do it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would just say having a great support system is the way to do it. And so I know, everybody's circumstances are different, but, for me, my spouse is 100%, on board with everything that we have going on. And we just have really great communication on, now kids sports. My kids are now 3 and 5, so they have a million things going on after school every day now. And so it's just really, having that support system, mom, grandparents, whoever can pitch in to somehow, get things going. And I know, through the pandemic, it's been really tough. And I can only imagine, for single parents and, figuring out, homeschooling and all of that. I mean, I really, sympathize, because I understand how tough it is. I couldn't wait to get my kids back in school, because there was just no way I could function, working from home and trying to do school with my kids. And so I think we've all maybe come out of this better. And I think what Caroline said, she got to take some time to spend with her kids and see that silver lining and everything of, and I feel the same. And I talk to a lot of clients and they tell me the same thing, that this pandemic kind of brought new perspective into what's really important. And I think we've all, in one sense or another, become almost more efficient in what we do, in trying to really separate, what can wait and what truly needs to get done. Because at 3 o'clock, on this day, I need to be done because my kids, finish their Zoom call at that time. And so I think that that's some of the things that we can take back and hopefully continue to, have our lives be better, because we've learned to compartmentalize perhaps
a little better.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think there's definitely some silver linings out of this whole situation. So I want to pivot and swivel a little bit. We also talked about pivot and swivel during our pre-conversations, because one of the things we talked about is, as a professional in a specific industry, in this case travel or hospitality, when these things happen, you almost see yourself forced to look where else can you go, right? I mean, healthcare last year had a boom in terms of industry. They couldn't hire enough people. Finance had a great year. Insurance had a fantastic year. So we talked about the pivot. Pivot is not always the solution. Pivot is not always the best way to go, just because you have to relearn so much of what you thought you knew. And we talked about that swivel move, right? Instead of completely taking a turn, is more about shifting a little bit of that expertise onto other industries. And I think we're seeing that now in the shortage of staffing that we see in the hospitality industries. I think a lot of people swiveled to other industries, and now we're having a little bit of a tough time, filling all of the openings we have. But if you're preparing, or if you're thinking of resetting yourself to that swivel, to that shift, what should you do? And Heather, I'll start with you on that.
Listen, I think it starts with the basics. Make sure you know what your current skills in your inventory is, right? And be honest. It's tough to go through when somebody makes a decision for you. I think some of the shock and what Caroline was talking about was, if you go and move to a job because you resign and you find something different, those are on your own terms, and you've already created your own story and narrative about how that's going to happen, and you're in control. When a furlough or something as devastating as what we've had to go through this past year happens, it can shock you, and loyalty and those decisions and all of that comes into play, and you can start to second guess yourself very quickly. And so I think it's important, to have that network of people that you can kind of take stock and say, well, wait a minute, I know I've got some great attributes and things to bring, and think through that and share that story and navigate, and also be willing to know that the first time you have those conversations, when you're starting to do that swivel, and I love that term, it may not be as smooth as you want it to be. Don't beat yourself up over it. That's okay. It's going to take a little practice, and you eventually, take some of those calls that maybe you wouldn't otherwise do, or put yourself out there, and have different conversations, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You might learn something. You might swivel in a way and say, I'm going to swivel a little bit differently, because the more that you can try those things, I think it's actually, you can create some of those safe spaces. And you look at this network of phenomena. I'm loving reading the chat of all these people connecting. That's it. I think the other piece, so one, do a skills inventory, but two, have some folks who are willing to tell you the unvarnished truth. And I think there's an important piece to there, because if you find those people that can do that, and they're coming from a really great place, it's only going to help you. So those would be the two things when I think about when you're starting to make that swivel that I think would help, and certainly were things that help me during that time period too.
Yeah, and you touched again on another thing that we talked about, which was having an advocate network, not just a network, but a network of people who fight for you. And so how do we do that, right? How do we work through our contacts? How do we work through our network to not only make them our friends or our partners or people who will I guess give us a recommendation, but people who will actively push us forward, actively find a place for us to grow to. So Caroline, I don't know if you had that opportunity. I know through Castell and Peggy, I'm sure you found some of that advocacy and how important that is.
Yeah, so I found my direct network was people very similar to me. That was, my active network. And I was very active within my little network. And then it came down to, more than half of us were terminated. The other half were still working, but they were so busy, they barely had time for a phone call. So I have learned to diversify my network a lot more, and I've worked on that. I was fortunate to have some outplacement help provided by Hilton, and then I've joined some other career networking groups and have diversified my portfolio very much. And then going back to the Castell Project, leaning on some of the people, I was part of the 2017 cohort and talking to them and looking for opportunities. And as you know, in the hospitality industry, there wasn't a lot the first the first bit. So things are starting to open up now, and I'm very hopeful that very soon I'll be working again.
Well, there's a whole lot of women out there, and maybe most of them must be hiring. So here's Caroline, she's ready to get back in there. Yeah. So that's a fantastic story. Natalie, you talked about that support system that you have with your family, with your friends that help you out with just so much more than just work, right? What about work networking, and how do you see that kind of creating those connections when your field specifically is so competitive?
Yeah. I mean, and specifically, my business in the brokerage, it's male dominated. 95%, I would say, of the people I interact with are men. And so I feel like when I find women, in my industry, and when I meet women at conferences or, property tours and all of that, I try to stay in touch. I try to build more than just, exchanging business cards. I don't think that really takes you anywhere, but I think it's just, keeping in touch and, finding, common ground and, development or whatever it is that they're in, and just trying to really build a genuine relationship. I think that's really what has worked really, well for me, is just, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be, 300 people. But if you start to build on that, just, 5 or 10 people that you have a genuine connection with, that's how you get that started. And, one other thing on people that are making the swivel, something that I would recommend would be to, improve your public speaking skills. And I think that, it can be for any field. If you just take some courses, I know there's courses on LinkedIn, there's so many resources out there, even I'm sure YouTube, taking some time to really work on your public speaking just goes, so far. And I know, we at CBRE, they provide that for us. They actually have a coach come in and, they give us this coaching on pitching and, for new business development. And I'm just shocked that, there's people in our industry that have been, doing this for 30, 40 years, and they're terrible. I mean, they're just terrible. They're nervous, they're fidgeting, they're saying ums, throughout the whole presentation. And so I think that is something just so valuable, that the sooner in life you can just become a better public speaker, it's just, it'll do so much for your careers.
Indeed, and I think that also helps with one of the questions that's popping up in the panel here is diversifying your network, right? Being able to connect with people in different fields and different areas, maybe the same industry, but let's face it, all industries have a ton of different divisions and disciplines that we could potentially learn from. So I think that definitely is one of the ways to improve your network and diversify your network. And I know, Caroline, you got a direct hit there and saying, are there any groups that you favor for diversifying your network and growing it?
Yeah, so the one that's helped me, I'm outside of Philadelphia is where my home base is, and there's a Philadelphia Great Careers group, and that has people that are both searching for jobs and people that are thankful that they got jobs through there, so they're back there volunteering and giving their time back. So yeah. I've got a lot of different contacts now that I would not have had otherwise due to them. Yeah. I also wanted to, like the Fortuna's Table, the initiative I was working on this past year was all in hotel ownership, which I have never owned a hotel. I've worked in the hospitality industry with hotels for a long time. So earlier this month, I flew down to Atlanta and went to my first live in-person event for Hunters Conference. Yeah. And really got some great connections there and have spring forwarded on a few opportunities from people that I've met there. So just stepping out of your comfort zone and going to things that are similar, but maybe not a direct thing that you've been involved with.
Yeah, and by the way, we have a ton of resources in Women in Travel Thrive. So go on our website as well. Find out, how to connect with all of us. There's a ton of us and a ton of resources there available as well. Natalie, I think we may be losing you a little bit with your maybe your internet is a little up and down. So I'll hold here.
Claudia, can I just
Go ahead.
I add two quick things just to add on to what Carolyn and Natalie have said. I think one, couldn't agree more in terms of public speaking. And I think for those, if that's a huge jump, how many people have actually done a recording like on Zoom of just themselves, of their intro, saved it, sent it to themselves, and just do that as a first step. And I think it's absolutely surprising. Remember the first panel I was doing with Castell about a year ago, and I did it and I watched it, I was mortified, right? So just remember, everyone has those moments. And I think, right, there was a great TV show with Brady Bunch years ago, how you imagine the audience, but I think it's putting yourself at ease. And the more that you get comfortable with telling that story, it's huge. I think the second thing that I would say in terms of networking, because I think some people have a stigma about what that word means, and does it mean social, all this stuff. It's really about finding a group of people that can introduce you to different concepts and ideas. have something specific in mind. Have some questions. Don't just go in and think that it's going to be this automatic connection. There are some that are going to work better than others, but be specific about what you want. And I think sometimes we can hold ourselves back from just being open and vocal about what's important to us. And that can steer you into a very different direction. So those would be just kind of two things that came to mind as I was hearing on that as practical ideas.
That's fantastic advice. I agree that every time I hear myself and I'm like, do I really sound like that? So that's always that's my thing. For me, it's my voice more than my face, but I do understand what that is. So yes, absolutely great advice. Check yourself and see where you can improve just by doing it alone. So that comes then to the next thing that I want to touch on base with you, because all three of you have had or have key roles in key industry in a key strategic position. And later on, we're gonna talk to Lani and Lainey, and she had some very interesting insights on what it means to have a seat at the table and how to get there. And so I know we had this conversation when we were talking about this panel, and I definitely want to hear, and I want you guys to share with our audience what the road is to that seat at the table. And then once you get that seat at the table, now what? Right? Sometimes the biggest part is getting there and not knowing what to do. So Carolyn, I'll start with you. I know you are now kind of in that path where you are like at the table, and I celebrate you, and I want to know kind of how you feel about that.
Yeah. So you talk like at the physical table. If I was in a meeting with a lot of C-suite people, and there was a opportunity where like somebody arrived late, but there were no extra chairs, I would always get up, give them my chair, and go sit in the back row. And I've learned not a good idea. So now, once I learned that through the Castell Project, I went and I would try to find out who I thought would be speaking the most during that meeting, and I would try to sit right at their side, because then I would make sure that people were like in the view. If it wasn't even I was contributing as much to the table, and I always try to contribute something every time I was brought into a meeting at a C-suite level. And if I was sitting at the table, I tried to get myself very close to the person that was doing most of the speaking, so that I would be in people's eyes and they would think, wow, who's that? And what can she do to help us?
Interesting. That is great advice. Actually, I never thought about the positioning at the table. So yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you. Natalie, I know you and I had a whole conversation about a seat at the table too, and you kind of touched on the same thing. What's your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I completely echo what Carolyn said. I think that's the number one thing. And I truly just really thought of that and learned that and really embraced that just, I would say, like 5 years ago. And, I was always, the team player and the one that would, again, give my seat up or say, you know what, there's too many people in that meeting, I'll sit out, no worries, it's a team effort. And I just saw over and over, it seemed like I was one of the few that was willing to do that. And, most of the times then I would not, get the recognition or be asked to, go maybe to other meetings. And it just, it's not something we should do, especially as women. I think we need to make sure that, we sit at the table, literally sit at the table and, raise your hand and ask the questions and, not be afraid to just, speak up. And I think that, we need to do more of that and apply for that job that you don't think you qualify 100% because you didn't take some master Excel course. You don't need to have a check mark on every single thing to be qualified and to be able to, learn whatever you don't know. And, nonetheless, and it just always strikes me how men, and I talk to different males in my job, and they're just telling me like, I'm applying for senior director of acquisitions. And I'm like, you're an analyst, like you've only been on the job for a year. Yeah, but why not? I can do it. And I'm just like, a woman would never think like this, or the majority of women would not. And so a lot of times they get that job. So I think, you know, we just need to not be afraid and believe in ourselves, and whatever you don't know, you can learn it. So just go for it.
Totally agree.
Don't hold yourself back.
Indeed. And Heather, sitting at that table, now what?
So listen, I think it's a great thing. I think when you think about, you know, how do you get to the table? The table's not as scary as sometimes when you're thinking about it, right? Remember when you were a freshman in high school and you think the seniors like had it all, and then you get to be a senior and you're like, oh, I'm like who other people. So you kind of get there and you realize that every step of the way, I think there's a couple of things. Do your homework and be prepared. So there's no, in my experience, no way that you can mask that. So be prepared, know it, and think outside of the box, right? Think, when we say that, it doesn't have to be the creative idea, but when I say think outside of the box, think about the issue or discussion from everyone else's lens who's sitting around that table. And that's where your contribution, whatever your job is, if you're at that table, you're not about your being your functional head anymore. You're about the organization and the enterprise. And so when I think about doing your homework, it's about, well, if I'm in HR, but if I'm thinking about it from the CFO or from the CMO's perspective, what are the things they're going to ask? And so if I think about it that way, the other piece I would say is have a vision, know what you want to achieve, right? And what you're trying to build from a value perspective from where you sit. So what are the contributions? And the third piece is raise your hand. Raise your hand, not just to make a point, raise your hand if you see an opportunity to say, hey, I'd love to help on this, or I'd love to, and this is what I can contribute. Those are things that are all going to get there from a real value perspective. So just a couple of thoughts on that one.
That's fantastic advice. And what I will add to that in just in general is look for the opportunities to bring other women to the table. Look for the opportunities to bring other allies to the table, male or female. Because that sometimes I think goes a very long way. I think we all have seen, you know, potential in people, and sometimes even if they're not a permanent member of that table, bringing them along to provide perspective in some business that you may be discussing is actually a great way to validate your point of view as well. So for me, that was one of the biggest learnings in my career. So that's great. So I want to kind of spend the last, 3, 4, 5 minutes that we have here. We're going to go into Lainey's interview next, talking a little bit about what's coming to us as women, right? There's an awakening in the industry. There's an awakening, I think, in the society in general, definitely in the United States, with women being portrayed in higher roles. We're being elevated almost every day as a species, I would say, right? We have movies and superheroes and women that are now like in top roles. We have a female vice president for the first time ever. So there's a lot of that kind of awareness that is bubbling up and is full of opportunity. So what are the things that you guys see in these bubbling up of opportunity that we need to be ready for? And Caroline, I'll start with you. In kind of giving us your next 2 tips of what to do over the next couple of years.
Yeah, so definitely be ready to swivel or pivot, whatever you need to do, whether it's a little bit or a lot, but keeping that as an opportunity. Try not to stay stagnant. I did spend a lot of time in one position, which sort of siloed you into an experience, so it was very hard to get out of that and go to the next one. But till like the time had come, you put too many years in, you're like, oh my gosh, like I should have coulda woulda. So pay attention to what your next steps want to be, and keeping that network open would be my point. So just make sure that you're always looking for something new and trying to stay innovative. What's going to be coming next into your industry, and how can you get ahead of the curve on that?
Thank you. Natalie.
I would say get involved, but get involved. I'm sure we've all done this, signed up for 5 different organizations and kind of seen the emails come through and gone to 1 or 2 lunches. And I personally have not felt like I've gotten a ton out of that. I've gotten so much out of, for example, I've been involved in Crew Miami for the last couple of years, and I got involved and I said, I want to, help out in different committees. And that's really where you will get so much more out of it than just kind of spending money and your time going to things randomly. So join an organization that you like, and, you know, volunteer for committees, go to the meetings, get involved in the board. That would be, you know, my number one. And then, you know, I would also say that there's going to be so many opportunities coming out. And like Claudia just said, women, I think there's a huge awakening, particularly in hospitality, for more ownership. And so I think that's going to just create a lot of opportunity for other women, and always support other women. And I think that's something big that we always talk about in Castell is, if you need, you know, an appraiser, if you need a contractor, if you need an exterminator, think of, you know, a woman that you can reach out to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And they can make that connection for you. And that will just create more awareness for other women. Maybe if they're just an analyst and they're not the senior director, reach out to the analyst and give them, you know, that exposure for them to make those connections for you, because that's the only way that we're going to keep elevating each other, is by using each other and helping each other grow.
Yeah, they say if you want to get to the CEO, meet the assistant, right? It's they're the people that are right there.
Correct. Yeah.
Indeed. Heather, what do you see in the next couple of years for women in a very kind of, you know, bubbly environment, I would say?
Listen, I'd love that when we're celebrating the 10th year of Thrive, that this isn't actually a topic anymore, because the playing field has been leveled, right? That it's not even a conversation. But I think there's some road work to get there. And I think one of the things that for me was important is that, listen, we all want to create our own journey and make our own journey, but we don't have to be alone on the journey. And so I think that one of the things coming out of this is that there's been the great disruptor, but the great common denominator that has opened everyone up in terms of what was kind of going on behind the scenes with COVID. And so the world of being on video, so to speak, has allowed everyone to see the real lives that we've all led, that sometimes I think we felt that we had to compartmentalize, whether we're a wife, mother, taking care of our family, our dogs, cats, whatever you name it. And I think that's an important piece that I hope we don't lose, that empathy level, and that we're all here with the best of intentions. And so I don't know if it's a real nugget, but I think the more that these types of communities and Thrive or Castell or any of those that are there, I do hope they create kind of a melting pot of all of this that just continues to create this incredibly strong foundation of people supporting each other. And having some open, honest conversations, and just part of it's just recognizing it is slightly different, and we're all different, and cherish that, but we don't have to be alone in terms of making that say. So there you go. That's
fantastic. Thank you. So ladies, I want to thank you for your contribution today. It's been a fantastic experience to get to know you, to get to pick your brains and talk about all these things that we all so deeply care about. So thank you for that. I'm going to share now the interview that I had with Lainey earlier last week. I was traveling, and I will caveat the whole thing saying that it was early and it was a hotel room and the lighting was awful. So I'm going to share it anyway. She looked fantastic, and that's all I cared about. So please enjoy Lainey Kane, and she's on screen. So I will go ahead and share that now.
Thank you, Lainey, for making the time today to speak with us, and for being a participant of Day of Impact 2.0 for Thrive Women in Travel. Where are you? How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And thank you so much for having me, Claudia. I was very excited when this opportunity presented itself, because I couldn't think of something I'd want to participate in more. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. And the Castell Project has been amazing to work with, and I know you're a big part of that. Lainey, you are the Executive Vice President and also Chief Development Officer for Marriott Vacations Worldwide. Tell us a little bit about your role in that corporation, and what do you do for a living?
Absolutely.
Your day job.
I'd be glad to. So for Marriott Vacations Worldwide, I am the Chief Development and Product Officer, which essentially means I'm responsible for growth of our new product offerings, growth of our timeshare resorts, growth of our brands and our standards. And so it's a lot of design, construction, and development, and a lot of front-end deal making.
Nice. So that puts you, to get kind of right in there, that puts you in the perfect position for us. One of the things we are talking about in Day of Impact this time around is seat at the table. And so you definitely are one of those women in the industry that have that seat at the table. Tell us how hard it was to get there, or once you're there, how do you manage that responsibility?
Well, I think that it's an interesting question for me because twofold. One is being part of the executive committee for Marriott Vacations Worldwide, and this is my 15th year. Until 2 years ago, I was the only female on the executive committee. We had a very short stint with a CFO that came in and out, and a head of human resources that came in and out, and female. But for most of that tenure, it was just me. And then when I go to my day job, which is running construction and development, that is also a male-dominated field, right? And no one's expecting me when we walk in the room in a meeting with a large real estate group that we were negotiating with. And I walked into the room. They had seen my name, but because Lainey, could be Lanny, could be something else, they weren't probably sure, if I was male or female. And I walked into the room, and the gentleman said to me, "Oh, great. Could you give me a cup of coffee? I would love," and so I did. I got the coffee, I brought it back, and then I sat at the table. He realized he was negotiating.
Hospitality first.
Right. So I think that when you're in situations, the lessons learned from that is, I didn't make a big deal about it. I just went with it, because what did it do? When I sat down at the table, it gave me leverage, right? He was embarrassed, and it gave me a bit of leverage, right? And so I often use humor in that same regard to get that bit of leverage. But the big thing is that you have to remember you deserve that seat at the table. You've worked hard for that seat at the table, right? So your opinion should be heard. You need to speak up. You need to share what you're working on. You also need to be prepared, right? Be at the table and be prepared, so that whatever slight opportunity comes forward, you're ready, you know the answer, you're prepared, you give the confidence. And so I would like to say that 100% of the reason that I'm on the executive committee is because of my hard work. But let's face it, opportunities come in and out of people's lives, right? And it is being present and having the relationships to find the opportunities and seize on them, because timing is also everything in your career. So we always have to be prepared, right? Our own version of the Boy Scout motto is our Girl Scout motto, right?
Indeed. And so how do you see, have you seen growth in that female presence in the C-suite or around the table, right? In terms of not just being there, but actually the influence that these roles are having, especially in the last few years. I think we've seen a huge change in kind of the dynamics of roles that are being appointed, and some of the new roles that have been elevated, if you will, right, to that level of influence. How do you see that change coming?
I see the change coming, and I see it coming dramatically, not only in my own company, but in, related fields or boards that I sit on. And I think that part of it is awareness in general. Everyone has a much bigger focus on what I call their corporate ID, their corporate inclusion and diversity policy.
Right.
But more importantly, I think it's women like us who are banding together and helping other women get these seats, right? So as soon as we have an opening anywhere in my company, I'm proactive about throwing candidates in there, right? And helping, right? So we don't wait for someone to ask, hey, do you know anyone who might be able to be our new CMO? We say, we need a CMO, and here is 3 great candidates that I know and I endorse, and we put them forward. One, that helps women just like us get those opportunities that someone helped us with.
Right.
But 2 is, it's personally great for our career to have, an ally.
Yeah, those alliances, yeah.
Right? And men do it all the time. Naturally, we don't think about it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but for us, we have to stop and look back and say, my favorite Madeleine Albright quote, might be a little bit abrupt, but she always says there's a special place in hell for women who don't help women. And this is our responsibility, to help and promote and bring up the next generation. And so that 20 years from now, when we're having this conversation, it's moot because gender is invisible, right?
Indeed. And so in that same token, when we're talking about a seat at the table and being in leadership positions, one of the things that I know we've discussed over this period of COVID and how it affected women's career is the difficult decisions that leadership roles had to make, right? In terms of cutting staff and having to let people either furlough or go, and how difficult those decisions are. I know that on the receiving end, if you would, people who were furloughed or let go because of COVID, we have to work through that. And we're talking about that a little bit in session 2. But tell us a little bit about that in the sense of on the leadership side of things. How hard are those decisions?
Honestly, if I think back of everything I've had to do in my career, and there's pieces of everyone's job that they love more than others. Getting through a downsizing or a furlough period and making those decisions is absolutely the hardest piece of my role as a leader. And when you're getting ready for this and making these incredibly hard decisions, we, as a leadership team a few years ago, when we were going through something like this, I remember the then head of human resource said to me, Lainey, it's not personal. It's not about, it's not personal. It's just something we have to do. And this is the criteria. And unfortunately, they got caught up in that. But I don't believe that. I believe it's very personal. And I believe it should be personal. And perhaps this is a key difference between, generalization, but how men and women lead. But I know I approach this very differently than my male counterparts, because I do think it's very personal, and it should be personal, and it should be transparent. And we should treat the person that is being furloughed or laid off with the respect that they deserve, which doesn't mean that you send them an email or you have a quick conversation with them and try to pass it off to human resources to tell them. Everyone in the department that you lead deserves the respect to be told with you or by you in the room. And it also deserves the help that we can give our associates that we have to put through this. And it's making sure that every single one of them have help, officially or unofficially, in putting their CVs and resumes back together. It means that we've made a list of everybody that we know that could have a role that would be suitable for that.
Thank you, Lainey, for making the time today.
Associates that we have to put through this. And it's making sure that every single one of them have help, officially or unofficially, in putting their CVs and resumes back together. It means that we've made a list of everybody that we know that could have a role that would be suitable for that person. And we put together a plan with them. And when you're laying off 20 or 25% of your associates, like happened during COVID, that, people say to me, that's a foreboding task. That could be a full-time job for a few weeks. Okay, maybe it is, but they deserve that respect, right? They were part of your family. They were associate in your company, and they gave their all. And while it's not their fault and it's not personal, it is to them, right?
Yeah.
And so
I agree.
It's good business, even if you don't do it because it's morally right, right? and I like to think I do it because it's the right thing. But I argue to others, if you don't care about that part, it's good for business. They're going to leave with a good taste about you as a leader and the company that you work for.
Right.
Right. And so if we kind of band together and help each other through, and I've seen more networking during this COVID downturn with women because of groups like Castell and Thrive and programs than I have seen in my 35-year career combined. And I'm so pleased about it because we have the numbers. We are the majority of graduates coming out of hospitality programs are female, right? We have the great networking skills. We have the multitasking skills. We have the logic skills. We have the empathy, right? We just need to band together as a group and watch out what we can do.
I think it was about time, right? That we had that little nudge to get together and do things this way. So no, you're right. So last but not least, I'd love to explore what your tips are for all of us or all of our members who are out there trying to get back in to work, right? Thankfully, this pandemic seems to be easing and we are getting ready to get back to work. Actually, we don't have enough people, I think, right now. So what are a couple of good tips for our members to start getting ready, get ready, be ready? As you said, you have to be prepared, you have to be ready to speak. What are the things that they should be doing right now besides, trying to get back to work, considering the opportunities that are out there right now?
Well, I always tell the associates that work for me, right, on my team or for my team members, that as much as I hope you never use it, you must always have your resume, your CV, and your reference list together and ready so that, cross fingers it never happens, but when the next downturn or issue happens or a new leader comes in your company and cleans house and wants to bring in their own people, that your resume is ready, it's up to date, it's already thought through. You've got the list of the 4 or 5 people that you think might be able to help you because of their connections. You already asked people for references and you know who they are and you've got their updated contact numbers because that gives you the first mover advantage, right? And that allows you when other people are applying to be that first person in the door because we all get 200 resumes. And if we find a really great one after 10, we might not look at the 190 that go underneath that. Mm-hmm. So I tell people always be ready, but also think a little bit out of the box. Because you do for a living with a company, it doesn't mean that you couldn't pivot politely and do something related for another company. And also, sometimes you have to take a step sideways or backwards to get into a company and prove yourself. And if you let your skills shine through, you will soar, right? Yeah. But loving what you do and having passion for it is 50% of the battle. I love to come to work every day. I get to create beautiful resorts and new products. It's a happy thing to put people on vacation, right?
Absolutely.
So do something that you love and you have passion for. That passion will help elevate and promote you through, because it is that sincerity and in which you express your views or ideas that I think will set you apart in an organization, because when people feel the warmth and transparency, they believe in that leader.
Yeah. Well, what a perfect example of that you are. I mean, listen to you is energizing, right? It's like, where do I sign up?
That's very nice. Thank you. I feel the same way. I love the energy I've been getting from all of the incredible executives that I have been meeting through Thrive or Castell. I think the energy is contagious, and I'm super excited about what 2022 is going to look like forward for all these incredible women.
I agree. I think this is definitely the ramp up of something very special. And we thank you. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for making the time and for sharing your experience with us. So
anytime,
we look forward to having you again, and maybe in a Day of Impact 3.0, we'll have a whole feature just to check and see what you've been up to.
I'm going to hold you to it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
What a great conversation that was. We want to thank Lainey again for making the time to talk to us, even though her schedule obviously conflicted with our event today. We are at the top of the hour. We want to thank you for joining this session today. We want to welcome you into Thrive. We want to invite you to be part of this amazing group of women who are working to support other women. And we know that every little thing that we do impacts the way that we're moving forward. We want to introduce some of the initiatives that we have going on. So we are sharing. Thank you to our sponsors. And donations that we have accumulated over the last few months. We have opened our empowerment bundles. There are two different kinds. There's re-entry and growth. And if you want to apply, please go to Women in Travel Thrive and apply for some of these packages. They will be awarded in July, and we are taking applications during June. So please visit our website. Go figure out how you can get involved, how you can benefit from this amazing network, and stay with us for tomorrow. We have another amazing day coming up. We want to also announce our matching network program. And this is a fantastic tool for you to grow your network, find a mentor, be a mentor, just get involved. As Natalie said, be involved and get involved. I think this is the time. It's free to all of our community, and we need to grow this program so that we can support more women. Last but not least, we want to thank all of our partners who have helped make this event special and make it happen. Without their support, obviously we would be still kind of starting over again. But a lot of these companies and a lot of these partners have put a lot of time, resources, and some of the money. So we definitely want to thank them for that. Last but not least, if you want to get involved, I think there has been a few links that were shared during the chat, and there's a lot of ways for you guys to get connected with all of us at Women in Travel Thrive. There's our email, there's our website, and we want you guys to share and let other women know and other men know that they can get involved in whether it's to benefit or participate. We welcome everyone into this group. So our Thrive Hive is always looking for volunteers. Feel free to contact us. Let us know how we did. And of course, like every other day, thank you. Thank you for being part of this amazing group. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you found it very helpful, and we'll see you tomorrow.